We all want to get to the heart of things quickly, right? No one wants to wade through tons of info to figure something out.
Right.
Well, that's kind of our whole deal here. We love taking those deep dives into complex topics so you don't have to.
Exactly. We dig through all the research and pull out those key takeaways, the stuff that's actually useful and memorable.
Like that aha moment when it all clicks.
Yes. Today, we're tackling something pretty big for all the parents out there.
Oh yeah, we're diving into the world of introducing solid foods to your little ones.
A big milestone.
It is. And we're going to be zeroing in on a specific approach called Baby-Led Weaning, or BLW for short.
We've been poring over this book, Baby-Led Weaning, the essential guide to introducing solid foods.
It's packed with info.
It is. And the whole concept is so interesting. It's a real shift from that classic image of patiently spooning purees into your baby's mouth.
Yeah. Forget the tiny spoons and the perfectly smooth food.
With BLW, it's all about letting your baby take charge. They get to explore and feed themselves solid foods right from the start.
It's more about those tiny hands grabbing and squishing and experimenting than it is about perfectly aimed spoonfuls.
Exactly. So for those of you who might be new to BLW, the core principle is putting your baby in the driver's seat of their solid food journey.
They sit with you at mealtimes, just like everyone else.
Right. They're part of the family meal.
And they join in when they're showing those signs of readiness.
When they're interested and ready to explore.
It's really all about discovery. Grabbing, squishing, maybe tasting, maybe not.
It's really a departure from the traditional spoon-feeding method that, the book points out is still how most babies are introduced to solids.
Yeah. But when you think about it, this whole BLW approach just makes sense. I mean, babies are natural explorers.
Wow, absolutely.
They're already putting everything in their mouths, touching and feeling and experiencing the world around them.
Exactly. So extending that natural curiosity to food, well, it just seems like a natural progression.
Makes sense. So that brings us to a really important question. When should this whole adventure begin?
When's the right time to start solids, and when is it okay to take this baby-led approach?
Well, the book actually lines up with what a lot of the major health organizations recommend.
Yeah, like the World Health Organization, WHO, Health Canada, UK health departments. They all suggest starting solids around 6 months.
Right around that 6-month mark.
Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, they give a bit of a wider window.
They say between 4 and 6 months.
But they do highlight that the baby needs to be able to sit up on their own.
Yeah, got to be able to sit up and grab food and bring it to their mouth.
Which, as the book points out, most babies develop those skills closer to 6 months anyway.
So it kind of all converges around that 6-month mark.
It does. And the book makes a good point about starting solids before 6 months. For most babies, it's just not ideal.
Not really the sweet spot.
No. And they actually share some really relatable stories that illustrate this. Like, there's this one about a baby named Max.
Oh, yeah, Max. He was a bigger baby, and his parents were constantly being told, oh, he must be starving. You need to start solids at 4 months.
But they really trusted their baby's cues.
Yeah, they waited. And Max didn't really start eating much until he was around 8 to 10 months old.
Wow, that's quite a while.
It is. But his mom specifically mentioned how much pressure it took off. Especially compared to all the anxiety that can come with those spoon-feeding schedules.
Oh, I bet. That makes total sense.
And the book talks about another mom's experience with her first child.
Oh, this one's interesting.
It is. She followed the advice back then, and started spoon-feeding at 4 months. It was just a miserable experience. Her son just wasn't ready.
Makes sense.
It does. And with her daughter, she just instinctively waited until she saw those clear signs of readiness.
Much better.
And it was just a so much more positive experience for both of them.
I love those personal stories, They make those expert recommendations so much more relatable.
Yeah, they do. And they really highlight the importance of tuning in to your baby's individual cues.
Absolutely. So now that we've talked about what BLW is and roughly when to start, I guess the next question is why?
Why choose this method? What are the big benefits that everyone's talking about?
The book actually lays out a pretty compelling list of advantages. Like, for starters, it's great for developing those chewing skills early on.
Yeah, since they're handling and manipulating the food themselves, babies learn to chew much sooner than if they're just swallowing purees.
Right, it makes sense.
It does. And think about the fine motor skills involved in picking up a slippery piece of avocado
Yeah.
and getting it to their mouth.
Oh my gosh, right.
It's amazing.
It's like a whole workout for those tiny hands and fingers.
It really is. It improved their manual dexterity and their hand-eye coordination.
And it's not just about the physical skills. BLW introduces babies to a whole world of healthy foods right from the beginning.
Yeah, instead of that generic carrot puree, they're experiencing the actual texture and flavor of, say, a roasted carrot stick.
Exactly. And this early exposure can foster those important social skills, too, because they're included in family meals from the start.
Right. They're observing, they're participating in that shared meal experience.
And this next one is kind of a big one. This might be an aha moment for some of you listening.
Oh, yeah. BLW can support a baby's ability to self-regulate their eating.
Because they're in control of what and how much they eat. They tend to eat until they're satisfied.
They stop when they're full.
And the book even suggests that this could play a role in reducing the likelihood of them being overweight later in life.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It is. It's like they're learning to listen to their bodies, their hunger and fullness cues.
Instead of being pushed to finish everything on the spoon.
Right. So BLW isn't just about trying new foods. It's also about teaching babies a fundamental life skill.
Yeah, listening to their bodies and knowing when they've had enough.
Powerful stuff.
It really is. It's almost like building in a stop button for eating right from the start.
Which is amazing.
The book also highlights how BLW can make meal times more enjoyable. It can really build a baby's confidence around food.
Because there's that sense of accomplishment when they successfully feed themselves.
Yeah, I can do it myself.
And the book says it so well. Babies are happier doing things for themselves, and it helps them learn.
So true. And because they're eating whole foods, they get to experience the look, the smell, the taste, and, the texture.
All the things that are kind of missing with a smooth puree.
Right. And all that early exploration actually plays a role in helping them learn to eat safely, too.
Oh, right. Because they can feel the food in their hands and mouths.
Yeah, they develop a better understanding of how to maneuver it, whether it's safe to chew,
And it could even reduce the risk of choking in the long run.
Yeah. Choking is a big worry for parents, and the book actually argues that BLW may reduce the likelihood of choking.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is, because babies develop those food management skills from the very beginning.
Makes sense.
It does. And, being part of family meals from the get-go, it's not just about the food itself.
Right. It's about observing, copying behaviors.
Yeah, they naturally start to learn how to use utensils, how to understand basic table manners.
It's like a built-in etiquette class.
It is. And the book points out that this has a ripple effect on things like family relationships, social skills, even language development.
They're interacting, they're observing.
Right. And for breastfeeding moms out there, the book suggests that breastfed BLW babies might actually breastfeed for longer.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the introduction of solids is so gradual, it's led by the baby's pace.
So they're still getting those benefits from breast milk.
Yeah, all those nutritional and protective advantages.
And we talked about those chewing skills earlier, but those early experiences with different textures can actually help those skills develop faster.
Right, which is good not only for eating, but for speech and digestion, too.
Now, let's be practical for a minute. I mean, we're all busy parents, right?
Oh, yeah.
BLW can make those meal times, especially eating out, a lot simpler.
It can, because BLW babies tend to be more adventurous eaters.
They're more likely to find something they can eat on a restaurant menu.
Right, which means parents can actually enjoy their own meal while it's still hot. Huge win. And you don't have to worry so much about packing up special purees and all that.
Makes spontaneous outings a whole lot easier.
Yeah. So lots of benefits to BLW, but I'm sure some of you listening are thinking, well, what about the traditional way?
Is spoon feeding bad?
Right. Is there something wrong with doing it that way?
Well, the book actually addresses that directly.
What do they say?
They say pretty clearly that spoon feeding isn't bad, it's just not necessary.
Interesting.
But they do suggest that spoon feeding can lead to some issues that BLW naturally avoids.
Like what?
Well, for example, the consistency of pureed foods, they don't require any chewing.
Right, you just swallow them down.
And if babies don't get a chance to play with food that needs chewing soon after 6 months, it can actually delay the development of those chewing skills.
Huh.
And the book actually uses this really interesting comparison. They say it's kind of like not giving a child the opportunity to walk until they're 3 years old.
Wow, that puts it into perspective.
Doesn't it? And it's also interesting how the book explains that babies actually manage lumps better when they're in control of feeding themselves.
Yeah, because they can manipulate the food at the front of their mouths.
Right. Spoon-fed food tends to go straight to the back, which can trigger that gag reflex.
That makes sense.
And a lot of parents notice that their spoon-fed babies gag more on those lumpy second-stage foods.
When they finally get introduced to them.
Right. And some babies even start refusing the spoon altogether.
I could see that happening.
The book really emphasizes that babies are just naturally wired to explore with their hands and mouths, including food.
And BLW just lets them do their thing.
It lets them follow their instincts.
Eat when they're ready.
Exactly. There's this great anecdote in the book about a baby named Arn. He was almost 6 months old, and he just reached out, grabbed his sibling's sandwich, and took a bite.
No way.
Yes. And it was his choice, his initiation into solids, not someone else forcing food into his mouth.
That's a big difference.
It is. And the contrast with the mother's experience of early spoon feeding with her first child is really stark.
The book makes a good point about active tongue movement.
Oh, right. For solid foods, you need that active tongue movement to get the food to the back of the mouth to swallow.
And you develop that through biting and chewing.
Exactly. And in the beginning, you'll probably see some food falling out of their mouths as those muscles coordinate.
Just part of the learning process.
Right. And the book suggests that this might even be a natural safety mechanism against choking when the baby is in control.
It's like their body's way of figuring it out.
It is. And it really makes you think twice about interrupting that natural progression with spoon feeding.
It does.
Yeah.
And the book also talks about how babies learn about texture and taste long before they connect food with feeling full.
Which usually happens a bit later, around 8 months to a year.
And that actually lines up with their growing need for nutrients from food.
Yeah, it's like nature's perfect timing.
It is. And the book stresses that there's no need to rush to reduce milk feedings.
Breast milk or formula should still be the primary source of nutrition until around 9 months.
With solids gradually increasing as their skills and intake develop.
Right. And that old idea that babies need to be spoon-fed purees before they can handle solid foods, well, it's just not true.
Doesn't hold up.
No. Breastfeeding actually helps develop those chewing muscles.
Huh. I didn't know that.
And that tongue thrust reflex, the one that pushes solids out of a baby's mouth.
Oh, yeah. And makes early spoon feeding so messy.
That fades naturally around 4 months, no matter how the baby is fed.
So it's not about the baby getting used to the spoon.
Nope, it's just their natural development.
Okay, let's talk about something that I know worries a lot of parents. Gagging.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it can be scary to see your baby gagging on food.
It can. What does the book say about that?
Well, the book makes a really important distinction, and it's so important for parents to understand this. The gag reflex in babies, especially around 6 or 7 months, it's triggered much further forward on their tongue compared to adults.
Really?
Yeah. It's almost like an early warning system near the front of their tongue, not way back like ours.
Interesting.
It's designed to help them learn how to manage food, prevent them from pushing it too far back or overloading their mouths.
So when a 6-month-old baby gags, it doesn't necessarily mean they're choking.
Exactly. It very rarely means they are actually choking or that the food is dangerously close to their airway.
Okay, that's good to know. Phew. What about as babies get older and their mouths get better at, managing food? Does that gag reflex change?
It does. As they get older, the trigger point moves further back on their tongue.
So they're less sensitive.
Right. And the book actually suggests that spoon-fed babies might miss out on utilizing that early gag reflex to learn how to handle food safely. And then, ironically, they might gag more when they finally start getting those lumpy foods because they haven't had that early practice.
That makes sense.
It does.
The book also mentions coughing and spluttering, which can be a bit alarming for parents.
Right, but coughing and spluttering are actually good signs.
Really?
Yeah. It means the baby is dealing with a partial airway blockage, and their body is doing its thing to clear it out.
So it's working as it should.
Exactly. And the book says, as long as the baby is upright or leaning forward, don't interfere. Let them cough it out.
Their natural reflexes will take care of it.
Usually, yes.
So what are the things that actually increase the risk of choking?
The book highlights 2 main things. 1, someone else putting food or drink directly into the baby's mouth.
Because that bypasses their control.
Exactly. They can't assess the food or manage it themselves.
Makes sense.
And 2, the baby being in a leaning back position.
Because that can hinder the gag reflex.
Exactly. It can make it harder for them to push food forward.
Okay, that's important information for parents.
Yeah.
Now, another big worry is making sure your baby is eating enough.
But not overeating.
Right. How does BLW factor into a baby's appetite control?
Well, the book actually suggests that this is another area where BLW really shines. Learning to stop eating when you're full is so important.
Yeah, it's crucial for a healthy weight.
It is. And the book talks about how parental anxiety, that worry about babies not eating enough, can actually lead to pressuring them to overeat.
Which can backfire, I imagine.
It can. Because it can mess with their natural appetite regulation.
And the book shares some lovely stories about babies naturally regulating their intake with BLW.
It really emphasizes trusting your baby to know when they've had enough.
Okay, we've got to talk about the mess.
Oh, yeah, the mess.
It's a thing.
It is. It can be pretty chaotic at times.
Food in places you never thought imaginable.
But the book actually addresses this with a sense of humor. They're like, okay, yes, it can get messy, but...
But it's temporary.
Right. And it's a necessary part of learning. All babies make a mess when they're learning to eat.
It's just that with BLW, it might happen a bit earlier.
And with all that hands-on practice, they often become quite efficient self-feeders.
Plus, let's be real, spoon feeding can get pretty messy too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The book talks about this fascinating historical experiment by Dr. Clara Davis.
Oh, yeah, the self-selection of diet in infants.
Tell me more about that.
So back in the early 1900s, she did this really groundbreaking experiment. She let babies who had been exclusively breastfed until they were between 7 and 9 months old just choose from a bunch of nutritious, unprocessed foods.
Wow, that's pretty radical for that time.
It was. And back then, infant feeding guidelines were super strict and limited.
So what did she find?
The results were amazing. Each baby, over the course of the study, which lasted anywhere from 6 months to several years, they chose a super balanced diet.
Like they knew what they needed.
Yeah. They were all healthy and well-nourished, and they actually ate a greater variety and quantity of food than was considered normal.
Wow.
And their weight gain was healthy too.
So it really seems like babies do have this innate ability to select the nutrients they need.
That's what Dr. Davis's work suggests, yeah. And each baby's preferences were unique. Some would go through phases of eating a ton of one food and then switch to something else. There's even a record of one toddler eating 7 eggs in one day.
7 eggs.
Yep. And importantly, all the kids were willing to try new foods, and none of them gravitated towards those bland, cereal-based diets that were recommended back then.
Interesting. What was the big takeaway from all of this?
Dr. Davis really believed that offering a range of nutritious, unprocessed foods was key. The study had its limitations, for sure. It was small, some data was lost, and by today's standards, it might be seen as unethical. But it did help to change those super restrictive infant diets and highlighted the importance of variety. But the idea of letting babies truly choose their food, that seemed to get lost as the trend shifted towards early solids. Still, it's a thought-provoking study that really resonates with BLW.
It really does. So for those listening who are thinking, okay, I want to try BLW, what are some practical tips for getting started?
The book has some great advice. They suggest offering food in stick shapes, at least 2 inches long. That way, little hands can easily grab them. It's really important that the baby decides what goes in their mouth, so just place the food within easy reach. Always check the temperature to make sure it's not too hot. And when you're first starting, offer a small selection, maybe 3 or 4 things, to avoid overwhelming them.
Keep it simple.
Exactly. They also say don't offer just one piece of each food at first because that can get boring. And of course, wash those little hands before they start exploring.
Hygiene is key.
It is. They also say it's best to avoid offering solids when they're super hungry for milk because those early stages are about exploring, not replacing milk.
Makes sense.
And during those early meals, don't rush them, don't distract them, and absolutely never put food in their mouths.
They need to be in control.
Exactly.
Okay, what about some specific food ideas? What are good things to start with?
The book really emphasizes nutritious, unprocessed foods with no added salt or sugar, and ideally adapt what the rest of the family is eating. In the beginning, steamed veggies and soft fruits are great. Broccoli florets, soft carrot sticks, pear slices, avocado. As their skills develop, they can share modified versions of family meals like casseroles, salads with soft bits, pasta dishes. The goal is to offer something from each food group daily, but that's not a strict rule in the early days.
So variety is important.
It is. Offer a range of tastes and textures throughout the week. Make sure the pieces are a manageable size and shape for their little mouths. And you can adapt a lot of family meals. Roast veggies with herbs instead of salt. Offer a little stewed chicken. Occasional sweet treats are okay, like fruit, but avoid candy and soda. And be careful of hidden sugars in those commercial baby foods.
What about things like peanut butter and nuts?
The book suggests being cautious with those. Peanut butter and nut butters wait until they're about 2, and whole nuts not until at least 3 because of choking. Always talk to your pediatrician before introducing peanut butter, especially if there's a family history of allergies. They also say to limit tuna because of mercury, no more than 2 servings a week.
What about drinks? What's best for BLW babies?
Water, breast milk, or formula are the best choices. Diluted fruit juice in small amounts only, and very occasionally because of the sugar. And offer drinks in an open cup from the start. It helps them develop those drinking skills better than sippy cups or bottles. They also mention some good grain alternatives if you need to avoid wheat.
I love the little stories the book shares about those early BLW experiences.
Yeah.
Babies gnawing on a chicken leg bone or gumming a banana, just exploring.
It's amazing how much they learn through those experiences. And if you have a family history of allergies, the book says to introduce common allergens one at a time and watch for any reactions. They also talk about the importance of fat for energy and brain development. Full-fat dairy is good, but avoid those hydrogenated fats. Fiber is good, but don't go overboard with things like raw bran or high-fiber cereals.
What about meat? How do you offer that?
They say to start with large, easy-to-hold pieces, like a chicken leg bone. Stewing can make tougher meat more tender. Even ground meat can work if you make it into little patties or serve it in a sauce. And you know how some people pre-chew food for babies?
Yeah.
The book says it's not really necessary with BLW. Babies can actually get iron and nutrients just by sucking on meat.
Interesting. So we've covered the basics. How do you know if your baby is progressing well with BLW?
The book emphasizes trusting your baby's own pace. That natural progression towards 3 meals a day plus snacks will happen when they're ready. No need to rush. Keep including them in family meals, even if the food has some mild spices. It helps them get used to different flavors and textures.
It's all about seeing the world from their perspective at mealtime.
Exactly. Let go of those rigid adult eating rules. Table manners will come later. Right now, it's all about exploring and developing those basic skills. And embrace the mess. It's temporary. And the book reminds us that their eating patterns will vary, and changes in their poop are normal as they start digesting solid foods. Seeing bits of food in their diaper doesn't mean they're not absorbing nutrients.
What about that worry of, are they eating enough?
Trust that they'll eat what they need. Focus on their overall health, their energy, how many wet diapers they have. That's a better indicator than obsessing over amounts. Remember, breast milk or formula is still the main source of nutrition for the first year. And babies are good at telling you when they've had enough. They turn their heads, close their mouths, lose interest. And don't worry about food fads. It's normal for them to love something one day and ignore it the next. Offer drinks with meals when they show interest, preferably in an open cup. And no need to rush weaning. Let them decide when they're ready to reduce milk feedings. Breastfeeding can continue well into toddlerhood.
It sounds like BLW encourages a more integrated approach to family life.
It does. It promotes social interaction at meals from the beginning. As your child grows, keep that hands-off approach. Trust their appetite cues and let them be independent around food. When it comes to silverware, let them experiment in their own time. Don't force it. Be a good role model by using your own cutlery. And dippers can be a fun way to introduce the idea of spoons. And those phases where toddlers suddenly want to be spoon-fed again, it's not a sign of regression. It's normal. Often it's just them being playful or seeking comfort. Introducing cups early and letting them practice with real cups, even if it gets messy, is a good idea. Small, wide-rim cups are easier at first. And sometimes a full cup is easier for them to manage than one with just a little bit of liquid. Let them practice pouring, too, with supervision, of course. And eating out with a BLW baby is often easier because they're more open to trying new foods. As they get older, let them serve themselves. It helps them learn portion control, develop coordination, and feel independent. But the book says to never use food as a bribe, reward, or punishment. It can really mess with their relationship with food.
It really seems like BLW is more than just a way to introduce solids. It's a whole philosophy about food and eating.
It is. And the book argues that it can be a chance to improve the whole family's eating habits. Babies learn by copying, so having a healthy family diet is key. Offer a balanced variety of foods. Trust your baby to eat what they need, and remember that breast milk or formula is still the primary source of nutrition in the early months. When you're cooking for the family, think about what your baby can eat too. Maybe add a little more healthy fat, a little less fiber, and avoid anything that's not safe for them. The book has good tips for adding variety to your diet and making sure you include protein-rich foods. They also say to limit processed foods that are high in sugar, salt, and unhealthy fats. Make healthier versions at home if you can. Shop for fresh, seasonal, and organic foods when possible. And practice good food safety with storage and cooking.
What about parents who are worried about their baby getting all the nutrients they need?
The book has a guide to essential nutrients and what foods they're in, with notes on healthy fats, fiber, and the risks with nuts. They also say tea isn't recommended for young kids because of something called phytates that can interfere with iron absorption. There's even a table showing food sources for different vitamins, and they address common concerns like baby stuffing their mouths, they learn to manage it, a possible slowdown in weight gain around 8 months, usually normal, and changes in poop, usually just their digestion adjusting. It's natural for babies to explore and pick up food from the floor, but gently discourage it for hygiene reasons. If they lose interest in solids, make mealtimes fun, eat together as a family, let them play with their food a bit, don't pressure them, and keep offering variety. The book really emphasizes that BLW aligns with the recommendations for exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, and then gradually introducing solid foods supporting their natural self-feeding abilities. And of course, follow food safety guidelines for storage, thawing, cooking, serving, and reheating food. The book also has references if you want to do more research and an index for easy navigation.
So what's the core message about BLW?
It's all about trusting your baby. Baby-led weaning is presented as a natural, safe, and enjoyable way to introduce solid foods. It empowers your baby and can help them develop a healthy and positive relationship with food right from the start.
We've uncovered some really interesting things today.
We have.
Like how babies can regulate their own food intake and the difference between gagging, which is normal, and choking, which is an emergency.
Right. And I'm sure many of you listening might have more questions now, like specific food ideas for your baby's age or how to handle things like allergies or starting BLW a bit later.
And the book, Baby-Led Weaning, The Essential Guide, goes into all of that in detail.
It does. We've just scratched the surface here.
So if you're interested in learning more, check out the book or other reliable resources.
And one last thought. If we can trust our babies to know how much to eat, how might that same trust and empowerment apply to other areas of their development? It's something to think about.
It is. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time.
Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to me and helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.